Myself, Dr. M. Parvez Ahmed. I'm an assistant professor from Mechanical Engineering, B.S. Abraham Present Institute of Technology. So it's an immense pleasure for me to introduce Dr. C.P. Paul, head of Laser Additive Manufacturing Laboratory, Rajaram Center for Advanced Technology. It's a Government of India initiative of Department of Atomic Energy. It is engaged in R&D in non-nuclear frontline research areas of laser, particle accelerator, and related technologies. Dr. C.P. Paul is a mechanical engineering graduate from his specialization area of specialization is tribology and maintenance engineering, and he did his PhD from Devi Ahilya University, Indore, and in the field of laser rapid manufacturing. Currently, he is working as a scientist officer, Rajaraman Center for Advanced Technology, from past 26 years, from 1994 to he's currently working there, and he is leading various research groups and engineers in the field of laser rapid manufacturing of engineering and prosthetic components. He held various positions in India and abroad as one of his research associate assistant professor in University of Waterloo, Canada, and Crompton Technologies in 1994, and he is a design engineer in GEI Holman, India, Bhopal. Currently, his research areas are laser material processing, laser rapid manufacturing, laser cladding of high performance material, fabrication of porous structure for potential prosthetic application of using RLM, numerical modeling of LMP and LRM processes. So it is great pleasure to have you for this panel for this session, sir. So I'm inviting you for this. It is my immense pleasure to introduce our presenter, and now I'm handing over the session to Dr. C.P. Can you take it?
Thank you very much. It's a beautiful day and very good start, and it's a really good opportunity for all of us to share the knowledge, specifically when we have pandemic across. And whenever there is some issues happens all around, there are always a side effect and greatest advantage. And this pandemic taught us how to do webinars and do all the things remotely. And yeah, we are fortunate. I'm fortunate to present our experience and the work with you all today. Thank you very much for the nice introduction. And so the title of the talk I selected is Laser Additive Manufacturing, Bringing a Paradigm Shift. So the idea is to introduce you guys about additive manufacturing in different perspectives. You might have heard so many people working in the country and sharing their knowledge they have. What I try to do in my presentation is whatever we learn and whatever we earned during past 15 years, I try to concise in and brought into this and in a simple language, so that even if the people are not from our area, they should be able to appreciate the gravity of the technology and contribute as per their expertise. So this is the main emphasis of the whole talk and presentation, and I'll be continuing with me now. The first slide I propose, I always show the acknowledgement. So we are a pretty big team in terms of additive manufacturing in the country. We are 15 scientists working in the area of laser additive manufacturing, and we have 5 PhD students, those who are full-time working in these areas. The type of dedication, the type of commitment that our students have is really remarkable. They start almost 8 o'clock in the morning and sit till 9 o'clock in the late evening. Yeah, that's the thing. So what I'm to say is they're working 13 hours or more every day and bringing the things to different shape. At the same time, a team of the scientists this is a pretty well organized team. They are working and contributing at a different domain and various aspects of the technology. Before I start, I will just tell a few words about our institute. What is RRCAT and what do we do? RRCAT is a premier R&D unit under Department of Atomic Energy, Government of India, engaged in non-nuclear front research areas. And these areas are lasers, particle accelerators, and related technology. So this is the big, the bigger picture what RRCAT does. The picture I am showing you is the picture of Indus 2. This is the house of synchrotron radiation source indigenously developed in the country, and this is the largest and only indigenously developed source in the country, and this is available for the researchers and the commercial companies to work on and take advantage of. This is basically electron particle accelerators, which is electron accelerators, having capacity 2.5 GeV and some 200 milliampere currents. So it's a huge facility. To develop this technology, people worked on the various aspects of it. So we always have emphasis on the related technology. We are total 15-17 employees. We have 45 PhD students. They are external, and some equal number of employees are also registered with the PhD. So we have around 90 PhD students, around 142 ANTAC students. These were the project trainees. They join us and they go as the project ones. They may be affiliating to different institutes, maybe NITs, IITs, or some other universities. So they are the part of this. RRCAT is also the constituent institute of Homi Bhabha National Institute, a deemed to be university under Department of Atomic Energy. And I have been assigned to be Dean Student Affairs for the Homi Bhabha National Institute at RRCAT. If you talk about the career opportunities with RRCAT, you can join BRC training school by giving a BRC online exam and going through orientation course for engineers and scientists. So this is the link you can see. Another option is to join as a K.R. Krishnan Research Associate after completing your PhD and really doing some remarkable work. You can also join PhD program at RRCAT through HPNI. So this is the link you can see. The program is available in physical sciences and mechanical engineering. You can also do MTech project work as a project trainee. So the second year work, whenever is required, you can apply to RRCAT using this link, and definitely you can participate into the ongoing activity. Beside all these activities, we also organize 2 months orientation course program, preferably from May to July. In this program, all the first year ANTAC students and MSc students, they can participate and they can join one of the group and learn the different aspects of it, so that it becomes a ready reference how the R&D in the country works, and they get a flavor of it. They can also continue their second year project work with us after the local program. The seats are 42 per year, and it's a really remarkable, good and very intensive 2 months program. So this is my presentation plan. I'll start with the introduction. I will introduce, and then we'll go for the global and Indian scenario of laser additive manufacturing. I'll be then coming down to what we are doing at RRCAT. And after that, we'll be seeing the technological challenges we have, what are the new opportunities, and then I'll conclude my talk. So this is the broad presentation plan. And I will say you guys to focus, understand, and write down the questions, whatever you want to ask, and I'll be happy to answer all of these questions. Whatever I'm talking is basically amalgam of the 3 books. So one book edited by Professor Paulo Robin. The name of the book is Laser in Manufacturing. We have first chapter into that. Another book is edited by Professor Rupinder Singh and Paulo Robin. This is Additive Manufacturing Applications Innovations. We have second chapter in this. And lastly, we are bringing a textbook on additive manufacturing with McGraw-Hill Educations. This is under press and likely to be released in the April 2021. So this is a very, the book is written considering the expectations of UG students, those who want to pursue their career in additive manufacturing. This can be used as a textbook. and the PG students as well as, and it also has a lot of practical information, so that this can be done, and this can go for this can be very useful for the novices and the experts as a reference document. So let's come to the introduction of laser additive manufacturing. See, if you go to the definition of additive manufacturing, ISO 52900 or ASTM 52900, it gives and asks you to have 5 criteria for the conformation for a policy for a process to be qualified as additive manufacturing. The first criteria is there should be joining of materials. So the process should be, you have to join the materials. You cannot, do other things. It should start from the 3D model. So that is the second prerequisite. Third, you should go layer by layer built up approach. That is criteria number 3 usually. And number 4, it should not be classified as subtractive technology, and it should not be classified as a formative technology. So there are 5 major aspects for any process to be qualified as additive manufacturing, and one should carefully see whether it can be qualified in that way or not. Now, when lasers are used,
sorry for the disturbance. The slide is not moving, sir. We are still seeing the first page.
Oh,
laser additive manufacturing. The title page is still there.
Just a minute. Let me try again. No, it's going on.
Yeah, now it's okay. It's changing.
Yeah, is it okay now?
Just move, sir. Just move the slide. Change the slide. Let's see. Okay, fine, sir. Yeah, fine. Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah, fine.
So I'll just quickly show you. This is the slide that I talked about the career opportunities. I just put it for maybe 30 seconds. Those who want to keep the information, they can keep with you. Just note down the information. And there's another slide I talk about the presentation plan. I'm also holding it for 30 seconds or so. This is another slide that's about the books that we are using, and these are the 3 books that I discussed and talked to you about. And the last one, the right side, is the book that we are bringing, the McGraw-Hill's. There is a very good book, likely to be a very good book, because we got very good reviews so far as these things are concerned with my colleagues and other people abroad. So this was a slide with the introduction of this. This is the 5 points defining the criteria for a process to be called additive manufacturing. So this was the thing, and where we stopped. So what we have to understand, we have to come up with these 5 criteria. Process of joining the material, starting with the 3D model, layer by layer, non-subtractive, non-formative. So these are the 5 criteria that we have to do. Another aspect is when laser is used in this process, then it is called laser additive manufacturing. Now, additive manufacturing is not a new concept. It existed since long, or I will say it's a more natural way of growth. It's a more natural way of growth. You see a seed. How does the seed grow? Seed collects the material from the surrounding, convert it into a useful form, and grow to a tree. So that sort of thing happens with the seed to convert into a plant. Similarly, an infant becomes an adult by this, and somehow it is additive manufacturing. So problem with us is, if this is the more natural way of growth or more natural way of manufacturing, then why do we took so much time to adopt it, and why did we go for subtractive and formative? If we judicially and carefully think on these aspects, you will find these processes were good, and we had been trying to do something similar. For example, we were collecting the bricks and mortar and try to make the building the way we wanted. Something we were trying to do it, but in terms of manufacturing a component is concerned, we never had a capability and capacity to go with this, and that is the reason additive manufacturing was never considered in the past. But in last 2 or 3 decades, a lot of things have developed in terms of the computations, in terms of softwares, in terms of capacity of the laser parts. So all these things change that stuff, and now additive manufacturing is picking up across the globe. Now, when we talk of the comparison of this technology with others, let's have a quick view of what additive manufacturing is as compared to subtractive and formative technology. See, you see this part, the dimensional accuracy. In terms of dimensional accuracy, additive manufacturing gives low to medium, subtractive gives very high, formative gives medium. So this is the thing where additive manufacturing is not very attractive. We talk the surface finish. Again, you see these are the areas where today additive manufacturing is not very attractive. Now, if you see the material aspect, so there is no limitation because we are using lasers that can melt any material. So there is no limitation in subtractive additive manufacturing. This is limited by the hardness of the tool. So that is the issue. Formative is used for metals and ceramics. You can't think of having formation of ceramic with this. So that is the limitation. So the major gain we get in terms of the material, and second we get in terms of the shapes. So these are the area where additive manufacturing is, and the most important part is it is a greener technology because we are using reduced material wastage. In case of subsector, there's a lot of material wastage is there, and formative is other way. So these are the points where additive manufacturing either good or bad, but somehow it's coming in and taking the specific spaces. In terms of the cost, additive manufacturing doesn't change a lot. The cost as the number of parts increases. So this is the for subtractive, this is the formative and relative. And just there is a small slope, and this slope is just because of the initial setting that we get it done. So when I'm talking of additive manufacturing, I'm talking of laser additive manufacturing and saying this is great and big. So let's try to understand a commercial angle of it, how the things are, and how important these thing in terms of it. Technological or techno-commercial aspects. See, today industries are challenged in different ways. There is a cutthroat competition, and why this is we have a cutthroat competition? Let's take the example of cars. Some 2 decades back, we had only 2 manufacturers, Fiat and Ambassador, and we didn't have anybody. So what was happening? Though the market was smaller, but the companies were assured about the business, and they were also knowing if they are doing not very good, but okay, they can survive for a long. That was the thing they had. On the other way, the customer was not very demanding. He was thinking this is a part of that, and people used to live with it. But what happened today? We talk of the car sector itself. We have many players. You talk of Honda, you talk of Hyundai, you talk of MG, you talk of Suzuki, you talk so many players. So the market has gone up, it's increased. The volume has gone up. Even Indian manufacturers, Mahindra is there. Then now Kia is coming in, and then we have Nissan in this. So, and every manufacturer is catering different, is segment by providing different models. You talk of hatchback, you talk of SUV, you talk of small cars, you talk of luxury cars. So everybody is giving everywhere. So what is going to happen is if you see all these things and try to understand the commercial or economical aspect of it, you will find that though the market has grown up, but the market per model has not gone up. And another factor, what was happening some 2 decades back, Ambassador and Fiat, they were not bothered. They used to run maybe 10 years or 8 years same model. But now every 3 years or 2 years, a new model is coming into it. So companies are forced to, co-op with them, change the stuff. So the number of products that can be sold per product, per model is drastically gone down. Now, if we talk of the cost aspect, now let's keep the strategic things aside. Talk of the business aspect aside. Let's talk of the purely engineering terms. The cost can have 2 major parameters. One can be the manufacturing cost, another can be the development cost. So what is happening since the volume has gone down, the development cost will go up, and this rise in the development cost is challenging, and you cannot be competitive in the market unless you control on it. So This is the area where people are trying to bring this. You have to come up with some more innovation every 3 years, new car, new models. The development cycle has to be smaller. So people have to work on time compression technologies, how things can be done, so things better can be done, better can be achieved. On the other way, people are going for adverse duty conditions. They are looking for novel materials, different aspects of it. Requirements are increasing drastically. So these are the part of this, and adverse duty condition is another challenge. The third part is, I told to you that technology is changing. See, earlier we were talking of only mobile phone, then we saw 2G, then 3G, now 4G, and now we are talking of 5G. So technology is changing very fast and very rapidly. And it has been seen that the 65% success rate for a new product with the superior technology to come in, and this is the why and how industries are challenged. Now I will go to the one step ahead and think of it. How does the customer perspective about these products and the technology? So if you see, the requirement is ever increasing. Now there is a lot of wants. Needs are limited, but there is a lot of wants from the customer side. They want all the features. They want so many variants. They want customization. And what is happening? The useful product life, I'm talking of the product that can be sold into the market, is limited. And delivery they want immediately. They don't want to wait for a minute or maybe few days. If you talk of the Bajaj scooters earlier, people used to wait for 7-8 years to get a scooter. Now, if you go for the similar solution, nobody will stop. So, and the cost, beside this cost, has to be attractive. So, what I want to say is, the customer wants the best quality product with all possible features immediately at the lowest price. So, this is the customer perspective, and this is industry. And people have to come up and co-op with some different aspects so that thing can be understood differently and can be compromised, and the people can go ahead with the business part. Now, let's try to understand. We talk so much commerce, we talk so much about the industry requirement, we talk about the customer requirement. How does it affect, how does it help in terms of manufacturing? Let's see how a conventional manufacturing works. See, the conventional manufacturing normally starts with a design. So we are having a synthesis part, analysis, then we'll have a documentation and drawing. Then we plan the product, how to do it, whether it has to be sent to for the fabrication, shall we send it to the welding shop or machining centers? Shall we go for a lathe or a milling machine or some forming tool? So this planning has to be done. Then we have to accordingly procure the raw materials. Then we have to procure the tools. We have to do the CNC programming in manufacturing. Then we go for the quality control, packing, and usage. So this is a typical cycle one can have for making a product. With the advent of additive manufacturing, I can say these are the steps which are not at all required. For example, documentation and drawing. Now in additive manufacturing, you are starting with the standard model. So you don't need the documentation and drawing. Whatever is the model, there are softwares who will convert that document information into the way they want. So we have a lot of saving, and even these steps are maybe required, maybe 10% or 15%. Rest of the things are not required. And in additive manufacturing, all the planning is on the machine, so by softwares and computers. So no separate planning is required. And when talking of the raw material procurement, here the designer need not to wait for completing the design to initiate the procurement procedure. For example, the purchase fellow, the moment you think that I want to develop this component, he knows what will be the basic material, as we are using shapeless material. So he knows that what is the material we are going to have. So he will not wait for design to come complete. As far as the volume of the product within the range of the machine, you can go ahead with and procure the materials like immediately. For example, you want to make a piston block, you know that it will be of so grade of aluminum or maybe so grade of cast iron. That is right away you can procure the shapeless material and do it. And if you do for a conventional material, unless the product is finalized, design is freeze, you cannot initiate procurement because the size is the limitation, and that is the thing. In case of additive manufacturing, we don't need a specific tool because whatever is in the machine is done. Maybe for the post-processing, you may go for something which is to encounter the today's limitation, but in general, you don't need any tool procurement. So these are the things which are safe and making the scenario very much different. So if these technologies, whatever we discussed, and if you try to combine into a form an advantage of laser additive manufacturing, first thing is provide complexity for free, because whenever the 3D object is slices into 2D, lot of things and very lot of complexity is resolved. In terms of the part fixturing, in additive manufacturing, we are going with laser additive manufacturing, we are going with the non-contact tools. There are no cutting forces, no forming loads, so things are simple. Simplification is another advantage. You can go for the mass customization. So if somebody wants, some specification at some other location, it's possible because you are making one by one. Another aspect is you can think of integrating embedding some sensors within the component so that thing can be realized, which is not possible. For example, you can think of embedding cooling or maybe thermostats at different locations so that you can have instant information of temperature at that location. So that is possible, and you need not to do a lot of things in that, and it can be embedded within the deposit itself. Another aspect is the material design freedom. In the material design freedom, you can decide how you want to proceed ahead with, how to decide the feature-based design and manufacturing into it. See, what I want to say is when I talk about the feature-based and design manufacturing, means you want better conductivity, you can use copper. When you want a strength, you can use stainless steel or any other structural material. So the idea is you can think of bringing a material design freedom in such a way that thing makes very much different, and you can plan. If you want a harder material, you want a variation material, locally you can deposit over there, and rest material can be other which freedom is being allowed. Another aspect is the logistic freedom. In logistic freedom, we have design, because this technology is Industry 4.0 compliant. So you can always send the design, take the help of the experts. You can push the things to the different locations. So you need not to count a lot of things, and there's a lot of logistic freedom available for the people. Since you can put the parts together in a very nice way, there are a lot of saving is there, so basically it's also reduced, and time in terms of DCC. That sort of arrangement, it's not possible to make such component using conventional manufacturing technology. So whatever I talked, let's try to summarize in one slide what could be the overall methodology of laser additive manufacturing. In this, what will happen? We'll start from object imaging or designer CAD software or math data analysis. All the three aspects will be the input for us, and we have a model like this, 3D model. Now we'll slice it. We do the job manipulation. We do the layer by layer material deposition, and finally, you may have this result output. So we are starting with this, doing a lot of things, and this is the output. And this can be a ready-to-use material, or if dimension requirement is not required, we may go for some machining requirement. If the material is not got, we can think of going to post processing. So this is the big picture about the LM methodology that we are seeing here. Classification, I will not go because some of you must be knowing a lot. Some might have told this, but again, we have to quickly understand is there are two technologies. One is powder bed fusion, another is direct energy deposition. In powder bed fusion, you have a sintering and melting, and here you have a powder feeding and wire feeding. In powder feeding, you feed the wire, feed the powder, and in the wire feeding, you feed the wire as a raw material during the deposition. This is about the classification, and you are seeing the videos, some small videos I have inserted in my slides, so that you can have a feel of what we have developed. These are our machines. We have developed both the machines at RRCAT, directed energy deposition machine as well as the powder bed fusion machines. And directed energy deposition machine can be used for making functionally graded materials, multi-material components. Shape can be near shape because dimension accuracy is a bit issues here. You can think of making some complex structures, complex geometries. In powder bed fusion machine, it's very good as far as the complexity is concerned. Deposition rate, the scanning rate is very high, so it results in refined microstructures. You can think of making some lightweight structures or thin feature fabrication using powder bed fusion. So this is the quick comparison of the technologies that we have developed and we are working with. Now, second point comes is the technology. There are two technologies, powder bed fusion and directed energy deposition. So what is the global scenario of this technology? So we are talking of it. there is no, everywhere we talk of technology readiness level, it can be 1 to 10. So this is the present status of technology in the aviation and the automobile. We are somewhere in 5 to 6. Tooling, space, and drone defense, we are somewhere 7, 8, 9. And dental and instrumentation, implant, artistic applications, we are already to the 10. So this is the present status of laser manufacturing globally. Now, what is the condition in India? In India, industries are yet to take up metal additive manufacturing into big way. Most of the people are focused on the plastic additive manufacturing. There are some academic institutions, they are joining now laser additive manufacturing in India. So this is the state how the things are doing. Now, second question comes is, who has these machines in the country? Definitely, RRCAT in North, we have indigenously developed machines. CMTI Bangalore has machine, ERCI Hyderabad, DMR at Hyderabad, GBRE Bangalore, IIT Kharagpur, IIT Bombay, IIT Kanpur, IIT Palakkad, CCCRI, CGCRI Kolkata, IGTR, CTCTs, and these are the government institutes which are having metal additive manufacturing in the country. Beside this, we have Wipro 3D, we have Honeywell, we have 3D Incredible, Dentcare, GE, and Optify. These are the companies who are working and metal additive manufacturing in the country as on today. Now, another part is who are working in the development of machines. So we have a couple of labs and institutes like RRCAT, CMTI, CMARI, IIT Bombay, IIT Kharagpur, PSG College Coimbatore. They are working on the development of machines. In fact, DMLS is also working in this area. So this was the global scenario, and then we'll try to push it on what is the thing at we are doing at RRCAT. In RRCAT, we initiated this program somewhere in 2003 with my PhD, and then we moved ahead. Initially, our systems were CO2 laser based, and we moved to the fiber laser based machines. So a lot of things are done, and we'll be showing you some of the glimpses. And if we talk about our whole portfolio, we start with the system design and development. We go for the material processing, we go for the material testing, we go for the qualification and validation, and after that we go for the multi-physics modeling. So this is a whole regime that we cover, and our whole activity is basically on the junction of advanced design methods, manufacturing and material processing techniques, and the material science. So we try to bring all the pure and working on this bit. So this is the machine we developed at RRCAT. This is the big picture you can see. We have 2 kilowatt fiber laser and then operator consoles and 5-axis manipulators, 12 power feeders, coaxial nozzle. So all these things are done by us at RRCAT, and indigenously build this machine. And the specification of this machine is you can go for 2 to 20 gram per minute of depositions. YP can be 2 to 20 gram per meter. And this is having a build volume of 250 by 250 by 250. Any metals can be tried out because we have a very nice glow box, which can give us to oxygen level of better than 20 ppm and moisture level of better than 30 ppm. So this is the machine. Another machine that we built is on the powder bed fusion machine. One thing I'll tell before I go to the second machine, if it's compare this machine as compared to the commercial built machine, the commercial built machine will be costing in the range of 5 to 7.5 crores. The projected cost of this machine is somewhere around 2 to 2.5 crores. So what I'm saying, they're likely to have 2 to 3 times saving in terms of import substitution is concerned. So this is the machine we built. Other machine we developed is a 500 watt fiber laser based powder bed fusion machine. So in this machine, we are using 500 fiber laser. You have a powder spreader, controller, thermal scanner, build plate. So all these things are done, and this particular machine is also having a build volume of 250 by 250 by 250 millimeters. This use and a lot of things we are playing with these two machines. The commercial cost of this machine may be somewhere around 3.5 crore to 5 crores. The machine that we built may be costing somewhere about 90 to 1.5 crores. So this is again a different ball game and different programs that we have come up and trying to push the things into next level of excellence. Now, if you compare these two technologies, direct energy deposition and powder bed fusion, you'll find that direct energy deposition is very good when it comes to part repair, and when it comes to making multi-material, it takes lead as compared to powder bed fusion. But when it comes to handle the most complex component, at the time bottle bed fusion comes out to be better. In terms of surface finish, it scores well. So these are the quick comparison of these two technologies. What are the process we are doing at RRCAT? Another things that I'm going to share with you guys. Before we go with those, I'll try to share how the technologies are assimilated by the people working with us, and what are our observations of how the things we think is changed. So if we talk of the process parameter, the parameters can be having a 4-hat: laser parameters, scan parameters, photoelectric parameter, and temperature-related parameters. We'll be discussing all these parameters in this. So you talk of the laser power and the scan speed. This is one of the prominent two parameters. If your laser power is too high and the scan speed is too less, then what you are going to do, you are likely to have keyholing effect like that. Now, on the other way, if you have a very less power and the scan speed is high, you are likely to have porous structures. So this is another status effect. So what happens is when you start moving from here to here, you will find that there would be a balling effect coming on. And as you increase the power and reduce the scan speed, the balling effect reduces, and finally you may have consistent, regular tracks formed. So this is the thing which is happening. What I want to emphasize is, here, if you want to make a porous structures, you can think of making some balls like this, because the reproducibility is very high. You can take advantage of this. But if you want to have a solid structure deposited, you want to go this area and work on it. So a selection of proper parameters is making the reference, and thing can be planned. Another aspect of this is, if you make a track, you cut the section and see what is the width and height of the track. And if it is more than 5, then you will have very homogeneous deposit. But if it is less than 5, then you will have a Tora caves. So these caves are across the thickness of the venue deposit. Because of the lack of fusion zones, we have these stacks deposited. So these holes generated in the machine. So what I want to say is, just want to demonstrate that it's very simple very simple concept to make a porous structure. Either you can use such balls, or you can make curvatures like this. And as a result, you can make the porous structure, which is not possible conventionally to generate such things. Now, when you have to make a component of the larger size, suppose you want to make a cubical structures, so you want to fill a square at every point, so you can have a number of ways to filling this. And what you have to understand, in case of the metals, these scanning and resting patterns are going to give a different thermal status and different distortion. So this is important. And if you we have studied the 4 patterns and tried to understand how these are changing the scenario in terms of distortion. So this is the S pattern, because it forms the S continuously. Laser is switching on, going this way, then going this way, and then doing this. Another we have a Z pattern, you are going from here, switching off lasers and coming back, and then you are starting. That is that pattern. And you can also think of filling the area with a spiral in or spiral out. All these 4s will give a different shapes. You see, this is the way it works for the S pattern. This is the way it works for the Z pattern. This is the way it works for spiral in, and this is for spiral out. So what you have to say is, though it looks very simple in a first level, that things will be simple and going good, but if you just change small parameter changes and the way you want to deposit, there will be distortion at different level, there will be resolution and residual stresses at different level. As a result, the material property will be directional. Our experience with Z pattern is the best. Another way of resolving this problem can be, you can do the Mendeling. You can just move like say, and every layer can be rotated by 67 degrees. First layer you are depositing, then turning it to 67 and depositing another layer like this. Similarly, you can think of making stripes to cover the larger areas so that the preheating effect can be managed. Another way, you can have a chessboard. You can make a 5 mm by 5 mm islands, and then just go on depositing the material across this. And after every layer, the next layer will be rotated. Everything like this square will be rotated by 67 degrees. So that sort of thing people try, and 67 is a really magic number. That works wonderfully for many of the applications to control the residual stress, to bring the things in very big way. When we talk of these, we have a lot of things to consider as a design consideration. We talk about the feature size, surface finish, power orientation, lateral holes, overhang structure, and residual stresses. So when we talk about the feature size, in laser manufacturing, the diameter of the laser spot is almost as a tool in cutting conventional manufacturing. Suppose you want to drill a hole of 2 mm, Your drill diameter has to be smaller or equal to 2 millimeters. That is the thing. Something similar. You want to have a feature size, you should have a smaller die. But what is happening whenever you are having a smaller diameter, though you can achieve a very good feature size, but fabrication time goes very high because they are depositing very small area and small volume. There are other parameters which plays the greater role in terms to achieve the better surface finish. They are laser power and modulation. What are the powder particle size that they are using? What is the layer thickness that you are using? Typical surface finish, the people get in the range of 5 to 10 micron RA value. You can make the component in different orientations, and all these orientations are going to give a different building time because and there will be different needs of the supporting structures. So we have to really figure out in which shape it will be the best. So this is the way we have to work and plan and think it. And the always emphasis is that self-supporting structure should be minimum, because whenever there is a support structures, you have to work out to remove the material and do some post-processing. Therefore, we should try that whole component is built in such a way that it supports self-supported design. It encourages self-supported design. So orientation should be made in such a way, and that is the key of the manufacturing aspect. If you have a lateral hose in the component when you deposit, if they are small, maybe the 0.4 millimeter or 6 millimeter, you are okay. The moment you are crossing the 10 millimeter, you need to have some supporting structure, and these creates a problem, and how to clean up this. So this is a matter which need to be understood and work on it. But 10 millimeter and more, you need to give a support structure, otherwise it won't do the same. If you have overhang structures, what we have to understand is the physics that if there is a solid material here, you have to deposit another layer, there would be very good heat flow. But when if it is the overhang structures, there will not be anything. Therefore, the heat flow pattern will be different, and this will lead to different properties and the geometrical distortion. So we have to really work on it. As a thumb rule, 30 degree to vertical is preferable, and if it is not the case, then you have to use some support structure so that the geometry integrity is ensured. And people also try to make some support structure for providing a chilling effect, just push the all possible heat. So that sort of thing people do, and many of the things are right. Another aspect is when you do the processing, you are melting the material. When the metal melts, it spreads, and in the melting cell there is no stress. Normally when you heat the material, it expands. There would be some stresses, but the moment it becomes liquid state, there is no stress. All stress are reduced. But what is happening when you cool it? Again, you have a contraction, and this results to this. Contraction results to some vessel stresses. So these are the things we need to, and we have to work on it. And what we have to understand here is at any point of time, local vessel stress is more than the ultimate stress of the ultimate strength of the material. The material is likely to fail. So these things are, and we have to work on it to manage the vessel stress during the fabrication of it. Now I'll go to the next level of the work is what we have done recently at RRCAT. What are we doing? We are working with a large number of institutes, R&D, national labs, and academic institutes. Our emphasis is to provide and support different institutes so that a better and good R&D environment can be done, and very nice ecosystem. People can work, and so what are we doing? We are extending our facilities. So people from BARC, IGCAR, we are working for the department work. We are working in Institute of Plasma Research. We are working with ARCI, Hyderabad, Vikram Sarabhai Space Center, Trandrum. Besides it, we are working with IIT Indore, IIT Roorkee, IIT Bombay. Then we have IIT Guwahati. Then we have IIT Kanpur, IIT Palakkad. So many. And in NIT we have NIT Warangal. Then we have NIT Surat. So there are so many things are working, including the IIIT Kanchipuram. So this is a portfolio where I am to show you how the things are being done at RRCAT in terms of the collaboration. So what we do is, how do we do in this? The people can write a proposal to us saying that if they want to do some experiment like this, they have to arrange all the raw materials and procurement. So far as we do not ask any money for the processing part, we do the process, we give the samples, but the raw material should come from the institute, academic institute they want to work on. And after that, the samples can be taken back, and then people do the characterization. And if some small and initial experiment has to be done, that can also be characterization things has to be done, or we can extend the facility. So that sort of collaboration is going on across, and then we are having 25 plus journal papers every year published from our group. So that sort of thing is happening, and things are moving into big way in a stronger way. Now I'll cite you some of the examples. This is the example that we made a Deloro 50 bushes. See, Deloro 50 bushes are used in control rod drive mechanisms of fast breeder reactors. And what they are seeing, these bushes are basically used to avoid galling. So galling is the phenomenon when the material gets self-welded and it creates a problem. So to resolve it, what our people at IGCAR did is, they took a substrate like this, and after that they deposited columni or Deloro 50 bushes using GTW building, and after that they machine in and out. And this Deloro 50 and columni is very hard material. Hardness is in the region of 740 to 830 VHN. So you have to really, remove the hard material to have to have to drill it, bore it, and clean it, all the stuff. You also have to remove the adhesion zone. They don't want any stainless steel stuff to stay over here. So that is the thing, and it took almost 45 days to build these bushes. After that, we started working on it, and this is the stuff on this. What we did is, we made a helical upward motion and gave the shape to this, and they machine it out, and everything could be done in 72 hours. So 45 days is reduced to 72 hours just by changing the technology. So there I am talking of the paradigm shift. So this is another component we did for the BRC or mesh type spacers. And this is what is happening. You see that the 37 holes like this. You have so many diamonds and triangles. All these things are there, and this has to work in a very proper way and direction was. The tolerance that we are talking is about the 15 micron. The thickness of the wall is about 0.4 millimeters. So 0.4 millimeter thick wall, 50 micron dimension accuracy has to be built, and these are so. What the people doing is, they were doing EDM wire cut, and they used to take almost 3 weeks to build 5 pieces of this in the wire cut. Now we started making it using powder bed fusion machine, developed at AutoCAD, and after that we are making each component in 2.5 hours. And this is changing again the whole scenario. A lot of saving in terms of time and money, and so many things are happening. So again, this is a paradigm shift. This is another thing we did for the central workshop division of IGCAR. They wanted honeycomb shaped orifices, so we worked on it, we built it, and this is also another thing here. Another application we developed is the compact heat exchangers. See what is happening. This is the heat exchanger 200 by 200 by 150, and the beauty is the channel size. The channel size they use here is very small. I'm talking of the size means, you have a 2 millimeter wide and 3.5 millimeter high channels, and this has to be through across and across. Very difficult to build conventionally, so we started making layer by layer depositions, and these things are required for supercritical CO2 Breton cycle based solar thermal energy generations and generation for nuclear reactors. So these one of such modules will be costing in the range of 80 lakhs, and what we built, we could build these things maybe in 7 or 8 lakhs. So you have to understand almost a order difference in the cost when we use this using laser manufacturing. The way 80 lakhs things we were getting, it was made from UK. That the process they use is acid etching followed by diffusion bonding. So that from acid etching and diffusion bonding, that process is changed from there to laser manufacturing, and things are saved a lot and money in terms of money to the country. Another we did for silicon clad layer deposit for the zircon. This again post Fukushima, we have to work to safeguard our reactors. So a lot of research is being, this is a part of the research. Here I would like to highlight that there are tubes of 10 millimeter dia, 0.6 meter thick, and 100 millimeter, and we want to have a deposition of 0.2 millimeter silicon carbide. The silicon carbide, and we have the zircon. That sort of things are done and successfully done, and we have already given these tubes to BRC for the testing. For the in-house requirement, we also developed some copper deposition. We understood how the copper can benefit and give the advantage to us. So that sort of thing what we did, and you see a lot of advantage happened. See, in copper we could achieve a uniform cellular microstructures. So the strength and other things are very much benefited. This is another work we did with collaboration with NIT Warangal in this with SS316. Put some tungsten carbide, the properties are improved and shapes are improved also. These are another aspect we did using our DED machine. One of the application was to deposit, to have a molybdenum layer at the front of the copper. This is particular for the Institute of Plasma Research, Gandhinagar. They want the molybdenum on it, and this is the part of ITER project. ITER means International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor, which is being built in France. So we try to develop this technology. So we have copper. This is basically not exactly copper. It is copper, chromium, zircaloy, and a special alloy was there. And after that, we use some nickel interface to, and then went to the moly. A lot of things are done and things done fairly well. And it is almost developed, and then we are going for the component building now. Another application, they are working with the IGCAR, making the graded structures of Delaware 50 and stainless steel. So a lot of success stories and things are done. And what I'm saying, when I'm talking of the dissimilar material, when we are talking of very complex shape, tight tolerances, we are, winning the race by defining appropriate strategies. And this is bringing the paradigm shift to the manufacturing. Another great example is making a graded porous structures. You see, can you think of making a porous structure when you start with a 0% porosity and move on to 60% porosity? So these things are done. You see beautiful work done at ArchiCAD, the depositing, and these are the microcity images. Porosity is the image. Porosity in the space is built and demonstrated. See, what I want to show is we had been taught that the porosity is bad in engineering component. It's true, it is bad. But we were very much afraid in the past as a human being. We were very much afraid of in the past because we didn't have a timing strategy on this. If you make a porous structure in predefined way and you have a very good control on the location and the size of the porosity, it can be exploited in a better way. So what I'm saying, making a porous structure, light structures, using in a different way, again is a paradigm shift in terms of the manufacturing and utilizing the material effectively for the different applications. So these are the shape of some components that we built. And after that, I'll be going to the next part is the technological challenges. We talk about the limitation of laser additive manufacturing. I'll be saying the production cost is very high. The machines are very costly. Everything is under patent. You have to come up. You have to make some go around. So there are issues which need to be covered and control on it. What are the materials we are building? We are challenged to show equal and better properties for the desired applications. So a lot of things are there. People have to work on it. There are some limitation on this aspect. People are trying to come up with the training strategies to work on it. Other limitation is the microstructures are different because we are going for the layer by layer deposition. You can go for the post processing of these things. So we need to go for that is again a limitation. Another aspect is the build volume is now 250 by 250. Things are there. People are trying to build bigger and larger machine, but still today is the limitation. Stepping effect, many people might have told on this. So I'll not be thinking, but again, this is one of the major limitations. Now let me go and see what are the opportunities we have, the people working in the area of laser additive manufacturing. Full domain is open for us to work on, from the machine software development to the process development and control, to the materials feedstock and the feedstock development, making the rules for laser additive manufacturing, focusing on the modeling and the simulations, coming with the characterization and testing techniques, quality control and assurance, application development, and more important, the education and training. So whole domain is available for us as opportunity. Let's see each domain one by one. When we talk of the machine and software development, there is a lot of huge investment is there now, and we have limited resources. Now what we have to do is we have to come up with a more innovative ideas so that the cost can be brought down, patents can be, limitation by the IP thing can be taken care, and we can come up with better machines. So that is one of the idea and the opportunity for us to push on us. Second part is a lot of things being done, and there are many issues. What happens there is sometimes issues with the repeatability of the process and so many things. So we have a lot of opportunity for us. People are working on this area, how to have a robust process and very good control system. So that is the opportunity for us to work on it, and especially generating a reproducible stuff. Whatever the materials we are using, basically they are outcome of the conventional manufacturing. So people have to think of developing some special alloys for these applications. For example, maybe we need to have some finer tweaking of the compositions, or may think of some better alloys which may perform better as a result of additive manufacturing for the specific application. So there is scope to develop these materials and work on it. And what I want to say is when you talk of AM, the material use is very less. You can always have a pre-mixed metal powders. You can do the deposition, and maybe 10 grams or 15 grams of the material can be used to build these stuff for the initial experiment, and later you can go to hundreds of grams. So like that. So a lot of feedstock material can be done and tried out. So there's opportunity for the people to work on this and develop the things in this. As far as the design of the laser additive manufacturing rules are concerned, it's not the replacement of conventional manufacturing. There is a need to unlearn the conventional manufacturing methodologies and think comprehensively how to design a product so that we can leverage the maximum advantage of the technology. So that is the stuff, and that is a challenge, and a lot of things have to go on this. People have to come with the design rules, they have to come with the thumb rule. And what I'm saying is, today additive manufacturing, less additive manufacturing is the art. It is a person depending. People come with some better ideas, and this we have to move this to a science and technology domain so that thing can be done and achieved in better and better way. There's a need to have modeling and simulations. A lot of effort is there in the analytical modeling because, but the issue is analytical model cannot handle the complex structures. On the other way, if we talk about the numerical solutions, it takes a long time. So now issue is, can we have some hybrid approach or some new approach so that we can do some, immediate simulation of this? Can we apply some nomogram or machine learning? Or that is the need. There's opportunity for some people to come up and push the things into different ways. There is a need to have a more sophisticated tool for the characterization and testing. People may have to go for simulated load testing here because the material property may have a different aspect of it. Besides this, there is a need to have a design code, SAME section 8, like that we use for pressure development, section 8, welding, we talk of section 9, if we talk of reactor components, section 3. So things are very simple there in conventional manufacturing. We need to have opportunity to develop some design codes and also certifying agencies and guidelines. So how to do it, because the process is new, the agencies are not aware of, things are not established. So there is opportunity for the people to come up and come with their ideas on these areas. Besides this, we have to go to new domains, come up with better ideas as a application development people. Capability demonstration we can show, we can think of dissimilar material. I'm talking of now today amalgam on copper, then I talk of Delero 50 stainless steel, but so many other things that we are working on it, maybe like aluminum alloys with stainless steel. We are working with the titanium with the stainless steel, zircon with the stainless steel. So there are so many things are happening, and we are trying to win an opportunity for the people to come up with a better and very good idea how to join a dissimilar material so that things can be done. Besides all these things, whatever we learn, finally we have to imbibe into a system. We have to think of a curriculum development. People are trying to do it. Many things are being done by ACIT and other institutions, but a lot of things has to be upgraded very fast because the technology is changing there, and there is a need to have a FDP. A lot of FDPs are being done in the country, and this has to continue so that we can have a better approach in this action. So this is all opportunities we have to contribute and make the things in a different way. With this, I'll go to the summary part of it. The summary is LAM is a novel methodology capable of providing new manufacturing solutions. There is a decent lead in the international level. India is getting up for the adaptation. CAD has done lead role in the machine development and process modeling. We are collaborating with various national labs and academic institutes. More innovations are required so that things can be brought to a next level in a better way. There is a need to tackle the 9 domains that I have specified for the successful deployment of this technology. With this, I will conclude my talk. Thank you very much. Now we can take the questions if there are any.
You have given some expression on porosity, but since cavity or holes between the layers is very important, right? So considering in the additive manufacturing, okay, how to address the porosity between AM and traditional manufacturing?
Please repeat the question. What is the difference between AM and
the porosity, right? How to address the porosity between AM and traditional manufacturing method?
See, what you have to do is in conventional manufacturing, with the people use the space solder methods and many other methods to make the porous structures. But what is happening in case of AM, you are not going to all those. By making a manufacturing strategies in different way, you are able to generate porosity over there. So that is the biggest lead we have. And the size of this, for example, in the order of 50 micron or up to 0.4 millimeter, it's fine. But if you want to have even larger pores or the holes, so you can always think of making some shape inside, which is not possible conventionally. So we have a big lead in this area, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's no other questions. Parvez sir, Dr. Parvez Ahmad sir.
Yes, sir. It's a great pleasure to have you, sir, and sharing us your vast experience with us. And the journey of your presentation was very nice. You started with the from the basic scratch of what is ALM, sorry, LAM. From then you started with the global and Indian scenario, and what is the capacity of LAM. Then what are the challenges which leads us to the to look forward what can be done in, and later the limitations was this is again the area where we can concentrate. And after that you took us to the opportunities of LAM. So, and this gives us the insight and what is the opportunity we have, so that we can work together, and we can see the opportunities, what can be done. And with this, it's a great pleasure to have such a great personality, sir. And I thank all the participants for your patient listening. On behalf of the Crescent, I thank one and all. Thank you.
Thank you very much.